Compound microscopy. The compound microscope's whole job is to magnify tiny objects set on a stage. Generally speaking, the objects are going to be something that you are capable of detecting with your naked eye, but you can't render any kind of detail with it. Even with a magnifying glass, it would be pretty challenging. This is things like blood spatter or gunpowder residue patterns, or looking at very, very specific details of something down to the cellular level. A compound microscope is capable, with very little equipment really built into it, a very high resolution, high magnification image. It creates a virtual image, not a real image. Remember, you're looking through a set of lenses, you're not projecting it. It's going to be a virtual image. That's kind of your rule of thumb. High resolution refers to how sharp the image is capable of being, and magnification refers to basically how big, how much you can zoom in to that image and see any kind of detail. Parts of the compound microscope. You're going to look through, there's a person's eye and eyebrow. Artistry is essential to teaching, isn't it? You're going to look through the eyepiece to detect something that's down on the stage right here. Light will be transmitted from the light source, the illumination source at the bottom, pass through the object, and out ultimately to your eye to see. The diopter adjustment is a special ring around the ocular lens, the eyepieces, that allows you to focus each lens independently to match the prescription for each of your eyes, if they're slightly different, if you're 20/20, if you're 20/40, whatever. The eyepiece inherently has in and of itself 10x magnification. The nose piece is this round part that helps you change which objective lens you'll be using to view the object on the stage. The objective lens can have its own magnification. So oftentimes when you get a compound microscope, you're going to, oops, I wanted to keep that 10x up there, 10x. You'll see a different number on the objective lens, like 4x, 10x, 40x, and commonly also 100x. When you're looking at an object through a compound microscope, you're necessarily looking at it through two lenses that are doing magnification. The objective lens and the ocular lens. So if you're looking at something on a slide on the stage here, using a 4x objective lens, that image will be transmitted again through the 10x lens, and your actual magnification, 4 times 10, is 40x. The object you're seeing on the slide, you're viewing it as if it were 40 times bigger than it actually was. There's always just a teeny bit of very simple math that you'll need to do to determine the actual magnification of your object. The frame, also known as the body, is the majority of the microscope. The head up here you can turn to move where the angle at which you view things at. The base is the bottom. You can, in all microscopes, compound microscopes, adjust the brightness. You can adjust how high up and where side to side the stage is. You can condense the light as well. Condense means to focus the rays. An aperture, which is not labeled here, is usually built in. An aperture control is built in somewhere there around the condenser, and that doesn't just focus the beams, but only allows a certain diameter, I guess, of light to come through. You adjust how where your slide is by adjusting the coarse adjustment knob or the fine adjustment knob. You can turn the light on and off, ultimately power the microscope on and off using a provided switch, usually on the front there, but it could be found anywhere. You're going to use the compound microscope by putting your slide down on the stage, adjusting the microscope to the lowest magnification possible in the objective lens, and then moving the stage up and down and side to side until you can see what it is that you want to see on the slide. Once you'll use the coarse adjustment mostly to do that. Once you've found the object that you want to see in the first place, even though it's blurry, that's okay, you'll then use the fine adjustment knob to get a good, crisp, clear picture of what it is that you'd like to see. Once you have that picture, that image, then you will move the nose piece around and you'll feel it click into place when you get to a new lens. One more level of objective lens magnification up. Do the fine adjustment to get it perfectly in focus again, and then zoom in more by switching the objective lens again if you were to desire that. An important thing to remember with microscopy is that more magnification is not necessarily better. If you're looking at a penny and you want to be able to see, is it a new penny, is it an old penny? You know how back in like the 30s or 40s or something, they had like these wheat pennies as opposed to having the Lincoln Memorial on the back. If you zoom in too far on that penny, you're going to lose what it is that the whole design is overall. The context can be very important. Sometimes it pays to just stick with a lower magnification to see a little bit more rather than just increasing the magnification indefinitely, and you end up getting some nice pretty detail, but you kind of lose the forest for the trees a little bit. How a compound microscope works, I alluded to this just a moment ago. You have a slide that you'll place. I'm going to change this color because we've got some reds already going on. You're going to place the slide right here on your stage. There will be an object mounted on your slide. It needs to be small, it needs to be thin, and it needs to be at least a little bit translucent because light is going to be transmitted up through that object. It will be sent through your objective lens, which was that bottom lens that sticks out from the bottom of the microscope, pass up through here, and ultimately into an eyepiece lens, which is what you're going to see. So you have the body of the microscope, here's your slide, again, artistry, and there's your eyepiece lens that you're looking through. So the light will be transmitted up through the object, through the objective lens. It'll go through a series of lenses and ultimately end up at your eye. The image that you see is going to be, let me erase all of this, upside down and backwards. You get used to this quickly though. You get used to seeing this inversion pretty quickly though, and it's not quite as disorienting as it might otherwise sound. Benefits of compound microscopy: even basic models, like regular ones that you find in a classroom lab, can magnify an object as much as 450 times. Since you see it in classrooms, you should probably realize they must be relatively inexpensive. They cost more money than you or I might want to shell out just to have one around the house for fun. But from an administrative, like a large, organizational budget standpoint, they're pretty cheap. Very easy to train personnel to use it. This should be intuitive too. They start training you on these things in middle school. Can't be that hard. Easy to bring to or house in a command center. This is really important. Technology that you can bring with you to the command center is really valuable because the sooner you can take a look at your evidence and find potentially hidden pieces of evidence, the more likely you are to be able to collect the full breadth of evidence potentially available to you. The less likely things are going to have maybe decomposed while they're on the way to the lab, or desiccated, or dried out, or whatever. The quicker you can see it, the better. Lenses can be swapped out or replaced easily. If you remember those objective lenses, the one that sticks down and looks at the object on the stage, these just screw on and off the nose piece. If you have a busted objective lens, it's scratched or the lens got jiggled out of alignment or whatever, you can unscrew it, you get a new one out of the box, and then you plug that one back in. Blammo, new objective lens. You can see some internal details of small translucent objects. Remember, everything that you're looking at on the compound microscope ought to be translucent. Some light should be able to pass through it. If it's fully opaque, the most detail you could possibly make out is the profile, like what it looks like on its edges, which can be useful, but you can do that a lot of different ways too. If you have something that's translucent, like an individual cell, you can make out some details. You can see where the nucleus is. You can perhaps see where the mitochondria is. You might be able to make out some endoplasmic reticulum or some Golgi. If you have pollen or something, you might be able to make out that it has a bit of a spiky shape overall to it versus being long and narrow. And maybe you'll be able to see a little bit more on the inside of those as well. The light is highly customizable. Remember, you have an illumination source that's going to send out light. You can increase or decrease the brightness of that. You can condense the light so you can focus it in at a point, or you can just let this light splay out but only allow a little bit of it through, and any combination thereof. You can do quite a lot with the light. And it produces, as we mentioned before, a high resolution image. You can see a lot of detail with these lenses. Drawbacks of compound microscopy are mostly that the depth of focus is limited and you have a narrow field of view. You can only see specimens that can fit on the stage and can be mounted on a slide. You have to be able to transmit light through the object. It ultimately creates a pretty 2D image, not completely, but a pretty 2D image. And it is a delicate piece of equipment. You can't just go handling it roughly. You have to pick it up very gently from the base, set it down. You can't go dragging it across the table because the vibrations will jiggle lenses out of alignment. You have to really take some care of it. Depth of focus basically means that you have these lenses, and when you focus the light, you can only see things clearly in a very narrow field. In stereoscopic microscopy, which is the next set of slides, you're going to see that this has a much wider field of depth of focus. So you can see a lot more height, so to speak, of an image in perfect focus. With compound microscopy, if you want to see the top of something that has a little bit of surface detail to it, there's some ridginess and 3D-ness to it, you want to see the details on the top, you can see that, but you can't, everything else is going to be blurry. If you want to see stuff at the bottom of some of those ridges, so like here's the, say the top of something that you're putting on your microscope slide, and it has some 3D structure to it. With compound microscopy, you can see this in focus, but all the rest is blurry. And if you want to see the bottom of one of these ridges, you have to refocus it. This will be in focus, but all the rest of this will be blurry. You're going to have to move that focus quite a bit. Narrow field of view basically means that you can only see so much of an object at once, and you have to move a slide around in all different directions to be able to get a good perspective on everything that's on your slide.